Welcome in Prep Baseball Report President Sean Duncan. Sean, thanks for the time ahead of what is a huge weekend for PBR.
Well, thank you very much. At this stage, I just get in the way of things, so I'm happy to join. So thank you.
Absolutely. Now, this year's Future Games have a decidedly different look, 3 different locations, 21 teams here at Lake Point Sports. There's a Midwest pod in Wisconsin, and 4 teams, 8 more teams at the squad up there in Northeast in Pennsylvania. Challenges abound in the country right now, but how challenging was this process of making the 2020 Future Games happen and doing it in 3 different locations?
Yeah, it's really no different than the challenges that everyone's faced, and just kind of being flexible and reading like what the governors are talking about at the state level, and part of our effectiveness, Cory, is we have a lot of connections at the state level, and we're nimble on our feet. So we knew the Northeast was always going to be an issue, so we were out in front of the Northeast well in advance. And then the Midwest was something that just kind of popped up more recently. So, that's kind of like our flagship, like where kind of everything was birthed. So it was pretty easy to just kind of pivot quickly and still create, a really impactful, meaningful event for the players, with everything, with the live streams and everything that we could provide to the players. But obviously, we would love to have everyone at Lake Point like we had last year. But this is the next best thing.
Well, certainly this will be the 10th Future Games, started in 2011, back when there were just 4 teams at Benedictine University in Illinois, then called obviously the Midwest Future Games, groups from Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and Ohio. You see the amount of teams, the players, the scouting this has all resulted in. What has this process been like, taking in the growth from behind the scenes at PBR?
Yeah, it's really, it's been an amazing transformation. I mean, kudos to you. You did your research. The first year it was, hey, here's an idea I had. Let's try to get these players from 4 different states. We had like a Division III field that was close to us, and it was if you have good players, like everything else works out, right? So we had good players from these 4 states, and we had a bunch of colleges come. Looking back at that, we had Corey Ray, who was a top 10 pick in the draft, and just looking back, like having to drive at the fields during rain, and college coaches pulling tarps. We're looking back, like now, like we're spoiled being at Lake Point, right? Like it's like the Taj Mahal. There's 8 turf fields. You got a jumbotron on each field. It's like all the hard work is done. All we got to do is get the players. So it's slowly but surely, as we've got more and more states online, and those guys at the state level are so plugged in, they get the players in their state. And personally, what I like the most about the Future Games is, not all these guys are famous. I put famous in quotations, because a lot of these more famous kids are committed, and congratulations to them. Week before the event, you commit, you're off the roster. And that's why last year we had 320 college coaches show up to Lake Point last year. Obviously, there's going to be a different look and feel this year, but I could guarantee they'll still be tuning in. But thinking back to that first Future Games is like, when you're kind of just bootstrapping everything, you're Team Indiana was loaded, now in retrospect, but we had a hard time filling a roster, and we didn't know if we had enough arms. And it's like the shortstop looked like he had a strong arm. So I turned to our Indiana director, who happens to be Blake Hibbler, who runs PBR tournaments for us. And I was like, throw this kid on the mound. Like, his arm works, just throw him on the mound. Turned out to be pretty good on the mound. Ended up signing in Kentucky. Ended up being a 3rd rounder out of Kentucky, 95, 98, Zach Brown. And, we got lots of those stories. And, by no means do we take any credit for any players, right? But it's like giving kids a platform to just perform. And my whole thing was when we created this was like, you go to like some other events like area code tryouts or whatever, and then there's back in the day 90% of the kids are committed, right? So like, why are colleges like, let's just make it 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 15 years ago, kids were committing way in their senior year. Now we got at the junior future games, we had like 10 kids commit right after the event, which is kind of scary. But there's a lot of schools that were migrating over and watching the younger guys. But the second year of the future games, it's just, I was thinking back when we were getting on this call is Team Pennsylvania was on, that was their first year, and they were a little light, it being their first year, but they had this one player who was really interesting, Brendan McKay. He was like 83, 85, but could really spin a breaking ball. But during BP, I was like sitting there, scouting, and I was like, I'm not so sure this, like, are you sure he's a pitcher? Like, because I really think he could hit. And that's like, Brendan McKay just exploded after that event. And obviously, he's a two-way guy in the big leagues, which, you can count on one hand how many of those guys there are in the world. So, but we're super excited for this week, and it's a lot of labor, but now it's just let them play. Be organized, and then just let the kids play. So.
Well, you kind of said it there, I think, a little bit, talking about Corey Ray and Brendan McKay. You're not taking credit for these kids, but is there kind of a sense of, you think about the Tigers now, Joey Wentz, Jackson Rutledge now with the Nationals. Is it kind of the excitement watching these players that you guys saw something in, that they get elevated and all of a sudden they exploded at a national level? Is it almost kind of like you were in on the band before everybody else knew about them?
Well, yes and no. I mean, look, like Joey Wentz is a great example. Like, he was a big fish in a small pond in Kansas, right? Like, he was a mega dude at the future games. And when there's 200, at the time there's probably like 250 college coaches there, like every school in the country. You don't have to be a good scout to see a 6'5" kid who's putting, wrist flicking 400, 380-foot home runs, and then hopping on the mound, clean and easy, 85, 87. You don't need to be a great scout to say, yeah, that guy is pretty good. But like, it was our scouting director at the time, Sean McCann, who was like, we got to get this kid. And so putting them on a bigger stage, because, let's face it, there's a handful of states that get like a lot of the national shine, right? But there's a lot of really good players, like Chicago, Illinois is one of the, like, I think it's like the 4th or 5th most drafted players. So it's a huge city and all that. 4 or 5 years ago, I lose track, but like on Team Illinois, there was a kid named Reed Detmers. I've been doing this in Illinois for a long time. I think I know every single high school. I've never heard of Nokomis High School. It's probably 200 kids, goes to their high school. You heard a rumor that there's a lefty that is good. Oh, and he comes from pretty good bloodlines. His dad played professionally, but no one's ever seen him. So we go out and see him. We're like, oh yeah, he's pretty good. He went to the future games and spun, the breaking ball you saw at Louisville, and just was a dude. 3 pitches, flawless 2 innings, and every school in the country's on him. He was always good, but like, coming from Nokomis, Illinois, it just gave him like an elevated platform. So, I know there's a lot of people that like go out there and take credit for the player's ability. It's like, no, but like, you got to find some kids, and give them the the props that they rightfully deserve. So
take me a little bit inside the selection process. Obviously, you've got a combination of the PBR events, the scout days, the boots in the ground, the high school competitions. How does it kind of all come together in one of your PBR groups coming up with a team going into the future games?
Good question. Yeah. So every state is obligated to bring their best squad, and it's we have tryouts, but we also, we're not this spring, but we're the only people out scouting in the springtime, and we're out and about. So, I mean, their number one responsibility is to know the players in the state. So, but I can tell you that a lot of our directors, almost all of them, take pride in uncovering a gem and then, bringing someone like, oh, not a lot of people know about. I mean, in this day and age with social media, the proliferation of social media and all that, it's hard to really have a hideout guy, but there's plenty of dudes that you didn't know he was that good. And when you have that many colleges sitting on top of you, you get a couple extra adrenaline jumps in your fastball or whatever. And so but still they handpick them, and there's different philosophies. Basically you're looking for, you want to represent your state to the best ability. You have to obviously fill positional needs, but you also want to serve up the college scouting world, pro scouting world, down the road. First, put as much meat on the bone as you possibly can to consume.
Well, I will tell you, Phil Kerber here at PBR Georgia, there's a little bit of bragging rights too that go into putting these groups together. He's already got some games. He's told me he's got handpicked ones that he's watching out for, some teams he's watching out for. So I'm sure that's an element of it too, is everybody wants to show that their squad and their states come ready to play.
There's a lot of underground, playful banner, if you will, between the states and bragging rights and all that stuff. But the last thing you want is to go out there and just get steamrolled. I mean, every single person is a competitive species, and you don't want to get boat raced by the team you're playing. So but yeah, Phil, Georgia's got a lot of fruit on the vine to pick from in Georgia. So I know last year it was a really sexy roster that was put together, and it looks like this year it's going to be much of the same. But who knows? Maybe Phil's inexperience of this being his first hand-picked team. We'll see how it turns out.
Well, those listening later in the show can hear Phil break down this roster, and it figures to be an exciting weekend. It all gets started Saturday with each location. The Futures game will be streamed. You can watch all the action from Lake Point Sports on Lake Point Live, powered by PlaySide. Head over to lakepointsports.com for more information. You can follow Sean on Twitter at SeanDuncan729, or get everything PBR at Prep Baseball. Sean, thank you so much, and enjoy the Future games.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate you having me. Have a good one.